My name is Jeff H. Sipe, and I have over 10 years of recruiting experience, including 5 years at Google. In this video, I want to cover a question that's asked by a lot of our clients at practiceinterviews.com, which is, how long should my interview answers be? And the answer is, it depends. It really depends on the type of question. And in this video, what I want to cover is the length, depending on the type of question. And then at the end, we are going to provide a little bit more background and talk a little bit more about a few tips and tricks that are really going to help you have success. Last thing to keep in mind is my advice, anybody's advice on timing is absolutely terrible if you're not adapting to your interviewer, mirroring them, and really picking up on their cues on whether you should speed up or whether it's okay to slow down a little bit. If you like my content, please like. If you have any comments, please comment below. And if you like my overall content, please subscribe. Item 1, commonly asked questions that are not behavioral questions. This includes questions such as, tell me about yourself, why do you want to work here, what are your strengths, etc. Think 60 seconds or less. And one of the keys for these types of questions and how to stay really succinct and on point, think in the rule of three key skills, strengths, how those are going to fit and align with the specific question that's being asked. The only way to really have success on these questions is to anticipate them and rehearse them multiple times. Item 2, behavioral questions. These questions typically include, tell me about a time when, give me an example of. They could be phrased a little bit differently, but that's mostly how they'll show up. They'll actually call out that they want an example. And for these questions, 3 to 5 minutes. And the advice that you see online when it says 60 seconds or 90 seconds or even something as long as 2 minutes, the example answers are the setup, one action, and one result. And that level of depth is just not enough to tell me how much you enhanced a process, enhanced a relationship, or really updated or enhanced the tech, etc. So in this case, what I want to do is I want to go through this using the STARL method. And we'll just go through it and we'll break it down section by section. Situation and task, think about 30 seconds. Hey, if it goes to 40 seconds, that's okay. I want to know your role, your company, your client, if needed, and just the setup. What was happening? What was going on? What were you going to do? Think simplistically, really basic plot line. Think Disney movie, this very, very simple setup. And that should take about 30, maybe 40 seconds. Next, actions. This is the area where I disagree with a lot of the content out there. And basically, I need to know what you did. And so actions, the way I like to break it down is, let's break it down into 4 sections. So think about 2 to 3 minutes and maybe 30 to 45 seconds per section within the actions. So section 1, research and chatting. You're always doing usually a little bit of a deep dive into any documentation, data, and you're chatting with some people. They're going to be a great resource for that research. Section 2 is chatting and doing. So you're still talking to people, working on that shared vision, that plan, and you start to do the work. You're actually taking actions and you're going to define a few of those. Section 3 typically is going to be something like testing, iterating, something in that space. So that could be A/B testing, that could be a proof of concept, that could be an MVP, but we're really doing the work and starting to get to the end. Section 4 really becomes launching, presenting, sharing findings, whatever that's going to be. And this last action is typically skipped over the most, but a lot of roles really require some strong presentation skills, some strong ability to actually launch a product. And so don't skip over that last section. Again, 2 to 3 minutes, think about 30 to 45 seconds per session. I don't want you to have that much rigidity, but the reality is that it typically falls in these 4 areas. It might be 3, it might be 5, but think 30 to 45 seconds. And again, if you have 5, you're going to be thinking in 30 seconds, 3, maybe you lengthen them out and maybe each one is 45 seconds each. Results and learnings, 1 minute. So first things first, I just need to hear your result. So make sure you're introducing that result to me. And the initial result, great. And again, that's a lot of the guidance that you'll see, but I need to know more. So you landed a $5 million deal with a client and they ended up being a reference client. Well, I also want to know that later on you won another deal that was worth 10 million and that the process you created with this client was actually repeatable and allowed you to win 3 other clients or win additional business with this client in EMEA or APAC. Really push on those results, really think from a leverage standpoint. It's critical. And then if you are going to add learnings in, think high level, 1 to 2 quick learnings, 15 seconds as part of your 1 minute, really high level. The reality with behavioral answers is I'm not going to hire somebody who gives me a 1 or even a 2 minute answer because the depth of an answer that short isn't going to allow me to see that past performance, and that past performance is the predictor of future performance. And that's why typically these answers should be about 3 to 5 minutes. Item 3, open-ended questions. These are questions that just don't specifically ask for an example. So it could be how, what, or in given said situation or scenario, what would you do? Those are typically the most common open-ended questions that you'll see. And for these questions, they can take a long time if there's a lot of back and forth. What I want to cover in this example is one that's going to be a little bit more straight up with no follow-up questions. Think about 3 to 5 minutes, 3 being really, really lean, and 5, it still might not be enough. My GCA answer to one of my questions at Google was 35 minutes. Now, again, a lot of back and forth, but just something to keep in mind. So section 1 is the clarifying section. So typically, this is going to be about 60 to 90 seconds. I want you to have pre-planned questions. So the pre-planned questions will speed you up a little bit in this section, and that could be like new versus existing, who are the stakeholders, what's the industry, etc. Then, depending on the question, you're probably going to have a couple of nuanced questions that just come to mind based on what's asked of you. Again, think about 60 to 90 seconds on this section, and that could change a little bit depending on whether your interviewer is answering your questions, creating that back and forth. Okay, the second section is the framework. This is absolutely supposed to be the fastest part of your open-ended answer. Think about 30 seconds. So how can I present a framework in 30 seconds? You're going to provide no depth on top of the framework, meaning you're presenting those 5, 6, 7, 10 concepts, and then you're going to kick it back to the interviewer and see if there's an area they want to focus on. This is one area where almost all of our clients can speed up. I think all candidates can speed up, present me with the concepts, and then see if there's anything that interests me. Section 3, the solution. So 3 minutes, but think in iterations or snippets of about 60 to 90 seconds. So you throw on the hat of the role, you get a little bit into the tech, the process, whatever the role is going to cover, and then you pull off one of the concepts of the framework and you just go high level. Again, you got to get into the weeds a little bit, start solving for it. But then after about 60 to 90 seconds, you'll do a check-in and see if your interviewer wants to go more in depth on those concepts or have you touch on another concept from your framework. But this is where the timing is going to be one of the most critical. Don't go into a 4 or 5 minute solution. You will lose your audience. 60 to 90 seconds, but likely what will happen is you'll have 2 or 3 solutions. You'll start to have a back and forth. And this is probably where we're going to go over that 5 minute time frame. Item 4, the others. So I just wanted to cover some other questions that are going to be asked of you. These are the less likely questions, but I mean, we can start with something like system design, which for engineers is a very, very common item, especially as you hit that kind of 3 to 5 year time frame. So these could be 5 minute answers. These could be 45 minute answers. It just depends on the system. A lot of clarification, a lot of back and forth is going to be critical. You should have the setup and kind of know the guidance right from the bat, but that's one area I want you to be thinking about. Secondly, estimation questions. So estimation questions, I want you to lean more towards 3 minutes. I would say 3 to 5 minutes One of the areas where candidates take way too much time on this is math. Really simplify, use very, very simple numbers. That will give you at least a minute back. But where I want you to add on a little bit of time is just the sanity check. Essentially, every American eats 25 cheeseburgers a week. Okay, just sanity check it. Add that little time on the end to make sure that your numbers really make sense. Trick and brain teaser questions, I like to speed this up a little bit. Think 30 seconds to maybe 90 seconds. They're really looking for you to problem solve quickly, make some assessments, and then get in and really give that solution. If you don't know the answer, you don't want to spend minutes and minutes trying to go through it. You're just going to really maybe do a little bit of guessing, a little bit of brain work, and try and get as close as possible. Because if you're not getting that brain teaser or trick question, you want to move on to questions where you do have expertise, where you will do well. Lastly, case study, and I just wanted to briefly touch on this. Usually case study questions are going to be about 30 minutes up to an hour plus. You usually know when you're going to have a case study question. You know how long it's going to be. You know that there's going to be a lot of back and forth. But if you're going into a case study question, don't think 5 or 10 minutes unless you've been given that guidance. Usually they're much longer answers. Item 5, tips and tricks. Number 1, Google Stopwatch. If you're not taking this step, you should. This will really tell you everything you need to know. If you're being too long-winded, if you're being too brief. And really, the pro tip here is don't only time the whole answer, time it by section. That will really provide some good value for you. Number 2, anticipated questions. This is all about the job description. Just go through that job description, pull out anticipated questions for almost any position. About 50% of the questions are going to come right from the job description. So just take that time and do it. And then number 3, you know what's coming. Practice. Practice is the only way you're going to truly get this timing down, get this timing right, and repeat as much as you can. It will just make you better. And to sum up, all this advice is terrible if you're not adapting to your audience. So you really need to adapt and adjust. For some interviewers, you're going to need to shorten it up a little bit. For some, you can be a little bit more long-winded. Good luck.